The phone call came on a Tuesday morning while I was grading papers at my kitchen table. The coffee had gone cold, red ink stained my fingers, and sunlight streamed through the window, touching everything with false warmth. Simone Bennett? The voice was female, professional, careful. Speaking. This is Detective Lisa Chen from Atlanta PD. I need to ask you some questions about your brother, Winston Bennett. My heart stopped. Winston, my little brother, the successful contractor who'd built half the new developments in Buckhead, the man who still called me every Sunday without fail, the boy I'd raised after our mother died. What happened? Is he hurt? No, ma'am, but we need to talk. Can you come to the station today? What's this about? A pause, long enough to make my stomach drop. It's better if we discuss this in person. How soon can you get here? I looked at the stack of ninth-grade essays about the Crucible spread across my table, at the life I'd built over 23 years of teaching English at West End High, and felt something shift beneath my feet like earthquake tremors you feel seconds before the real shaking starts. I can be there in an hour. I didn't know then that I was about to discover something that would force me to choose between the brother I loved and the truth I'd spent my entire life teaching my students to pursue. I didn't know that by the end of the week I'd be standing in a courtroom, wearing our grandmother's ring, the one engraved with truth over blood, and testifying against my own flesh and blood. Some stories don't have happy endings. Some stories are just about surviving the choice between two kinds of pain. This is mine. 24 hours earlier. Simone, you worry too much. Winston's voice was warm through the phone, that Sunday call as regular as church bells. I'm fine. Business is good. Life is good. I sat on my porch in West End, watching neighbors walk by on their way to evening service at Friendship Baptist, feeling that familiar mix of pride and protectiveness I'd carried since he was 7 and I was 16, since the day Mama died and I became more parent than sister. You sound tired, Win. Big project wrapping up, the Riverside development. Remember I told you about it? The luxury condos near the Beltline? Yeah, 40 units. All sold before we even finished construction. Should be done next month. Then maybe I'll finally take that vacation you keep nagging me about. He laughed, and I heard the boy he'd been, the one who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms, who'd hold my hand so tight I thought my fingers would break. Promise me. You work too hard. I promise, Sim. Hey, you still coming for dinner next Sunday? Wouldn't miss it. Your catfish is the only thing that gets me through grading season. Love you, big sister. Love you too, baby brother. I hung up and touched the ring on my right hand, Grandma Rose's ring, the one she'd given me before she died 10 years ago. It was simple gold, with a small sapphire, and an inscription that had puzzled me as a child. Truth over blood. What does it mean, Grandma? I'd asked when I was 12, sitting in her tiny kitchen in Vine City while she rolled out biscuit dough. She'd looked at me with those ancient eyes that had seen Jim Crow and Freedom Riders, that had buried a husband at 40 and a daughter at 56. Someday, baby girl, you'll understand. Sometimes telling the truth costs you everything you love, but living with a lie costs you your soul, and your soul is the only thing you can't replace. I didn't understand then, but I was about to learn, in the cruelest way possible, exactly what she meant. Present. The police station. Detective Chen was in her late 30s, Asian American, sharp-eyed, with the kind of stillness that comes from seeing too much humanity at its worst. She led me to a small interview room that smelled of old coffee and the desperate lies people tell in such spaces. Thank you for coming, Ms. Bennett. I know this is difficult. What's going on? You said this was about Winston. She placed a file folder on the table but didn't open it immediately. just looked at me with an expression I couldn't read, part sympathy, part calculation. How well do you know your brother's business? He's a contractor, builds residential properties, houses, small apartment complexes. He's been doing it for 20 years, since he was 25. He's successful, honest, pays his taxes, treats his workers well. Why? When's the last time you were at his house? The question felt wrong, too specific, loaded with implications I couldn't grasp. Last month, Sunday dinner. He makes this catfish with hot sauce and cornmeal that's exactly like Mama used to. I stopped. Detective, please, tell me what this is about. You're scaring me. Chen opened the folder slowly, deliberately. Inside were photos. The first showed Winston's house, a beautiful craftsman bungalow in Morningside, the kind of place that says success without screaming it, with its wide porch and carefully maintained garden. 3 days ago, we executed a search warrant on this property. A search warrant? For what? Winston wouldn't. We received information about a missing person case we've been working. A young woman named Alicia Thornton, age 22, disappeared 6 months ago after working as a temporary administrative assistant for your brother's construction company. My mouth went dry. Winston wouldn't. He has nothing to do with anyone going missing. He runs a legitimate business. He employs over 50 people. He's on the board of his neighborhood association. Ms. Bennett. Chen's voice was gentle but implacable. In your brother's basement, we found a room. A locked room that doesn't appear on any of the original house plans. Inside that room, we found evidence of long-term imprisonment. Chains bolted to the concrete walls, a mattress on the floor, food wrappers, empty water bottles, and this. She laid out another photo. A young woman's face, terrified, eyes hollow, holding up today's newspaper. The date was clearly visible. This photo was taken yesterday. Alicia Thornton is alive, and she was being held in your brother's basement for 6 months, in a room he built specifically for that purpose, with soundproofing, with ventilation, with locks that only open from the outside. The room tilted. The fluorescent lights became too bright, burning into my retinas. I heard my own breathing, too loud, too fast, like I'd been running. No, you're wrong. Winston wouldn't. There's been a mistake. Someone else must have access to his house. Someone. She identified him, Ms. Bennett, by name. She described him in detail. His voice, his mannerisms, the specific things he said to her. And when we started looking deeper into his background, cross-referencing with other missing persons cases, we found a pattern. Chen laid out more photos. 2 more young women, smiling in what looked like driver's license photos or social media pictures. Jessica Reeves, age 24, went missing 14 months ago. Last known employer, Bennett Construction, where she worked as a payroll clerk for 3 months. Tamara Washington, age 23, went missing 8 months ago. She was a receptionist at Bennett Construction for 6 weeks before she disappeared. But where are they? We don't know yet. We're still searching. But Ms. Bennett, I need you to understand something very clearly. She leaned forward, her eyes locked on mine. Your brother is not the man you think he is. He's not the man anyone thinks he is. He's been operating as a predator for at least the past 2 years, possibly longer. And we need your help to find these other women before it's too late. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping loud against the linoleum floor. I want to see him. I want to see Winston right now. That's not possible at this moment. He's being processed and will be arraigned tomorrow morning. But Ms. Bennett, I need to ask you some questions. Have you ever noticed anything unusual about his behavior? Unexplained absences? Changes in routine? Has he ever mentioned these women or— Stop! My hands were shaking so badly I had to clasp them together. I looked down at Grandma Rose's ring, at those words I'd carried for 30 years without truly understanding their weight. Truth over blood. I need time. I need to think. I can't process this. Ms. Bennett, I understand this is overwhelming, but time is critical. If Jessica and Tamara are still alive, every hour matters. Please. My voice cracked. Just give me until tomorrow. Let me see him first. Let me understand what's happening. Chen studied me with something like pity mixed with professional assessment. 24 hours. Then I need you to come back and make a formal statement. There are things only family would know. Patterns of behavior, places he might go, properties he might own that aren't in his name. Things that could help us find these women. Will you help us? I looked at her, at the photos spread on the table like evidence at a trial, at the proof of horrors I couldn't comprehend. And I thought of Winston at 7, small and broken, crying in my arms at Mama's funeral. Winston at 16, graduating high school with honors because I'd worked 2 jobs to keep us fed and housed and hopeful. Winston at 30, successful and grateful, buying me a car because mine had died, saying, I owe you everything, Sim. Everything I am is because of you. I'll come back, I whispered. But I need to see him first. I need to hear him say it. Flashback. 1991. Simone, why did Mama have to die? Winston was 7 years old, small for his age, his face pressed against my shoulder in the back pew of Mount Zion Baptist Church. The funeral was over. Everyone had gone home or to Grandma Rose's house for the repast. But Winston had refused to leave, had sat in that pew crying until only the 2 of us remained in the dimming light filtering through stained glass windows. I was 16 and had no idea how to answer. Our mother had been gone 3 weeks. Breast cancer, diagnosed too late, progressing too fast. And suddenly I was parent, provider, protector, and grief counselor to a first grader while trying to finish my own junior year of high school. I don't know, baby. Sometimes bad things happen and we don't get to know why. Will you die too? The question pierced me. No. I'm going to be here. I promise. I'm not leaving you. Promise? I promise. He lifted his face, streaked with tears and snot, and held up his pinky finger. It was something Mama used to do with us. Pinky promises were sacred, unbreakable. I linked my pinky with his. I promise I'll always protect you, Winston. Always. Grandma Rose appeared in the church doorway, backlit by the setting sun. She was 80 then, too old to be raising great-grandchildren, but she let us move into her tiny house in Vine City because we had nowhere else to go and she'd rather die than see us split up by the system. Come on, children, let's go home. That night, after I'd tucked Winston into bed on the pull-out sofa that would be his bed for the next 6 years, Grandma Rose called me to the kitchen table. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the clock and the distant sound of traffic on MLK Drive. She took my hand and placed something in my palm. Her ring. The gold band with the small sapphire that caught the light even in that dim kitchen. This was my mother's, she said. And her mother's before that. Goes back to 1867, right after emancipation. Your great-great-great-grandmother Charity wore this when she testified in court against the white man who killed her husband. Took courage most folks don't have. She knew speaking truth meant danger, could mean death, but she did it anyway because some things matter more than safety. Why are you giving this to me, Grandma? She was quiet for a long moment, her weathered hands folded on the faded tablecloth. Because you're going to need to remember something, baby girl. Blood is important. Family is important. We survive because we protect our own. But truth, she tapped the inscription with one arthritic finger. Truth is more important than blood. When the time comes to choose, and it will come for you someday, you remember what side you're on. You remember who you really are. I don't understand. You will. When you're older and the world makes you choose between loyalty and righteousness, you'll understand. I'm giving you this now so you'll remember. So you'll have the strength to do what's right, even when it costs you everything. I didn't understand. I was 16 and drowning in responsibility, trying to figure out how to keep my brother fed and clothed and in school while finishing my own education. But I took the ring and I wore it, and over the years it became part of me, a weight on my right hand that I touched when I needed strength or courage, or just a reminder that I came from people who survived impossible things. I touched it now, 33 years later, as I drove to the county jail to see my brother and finally understand what Grandma Rose had been trying to tell me all along. Present. The county jail. They made me wait 2 hours in a holding area with plastic chairs and a vending machine that only took exact change. Around me sat other visitors, mothers, wives, girlfriends, all wearing the same expression of weary resignation, of loving someone who'd done something unforgivable. I wondered if they looked at me and saw one of them. I wondered if I was. Finally, a guard called my name and led me through multiple locked doors, each one clanging shut behind me with a finality that made my chest tight. The visiting room was divided by thick glass, with phones on either side for communication. No physical contact allowed. They brought Winston in wearing an orange jumpsuit that made him look smaller, older than his 45 years. His hands were cuffed in front of him. His face was drawn, stubble shadowing his jaw. But it was his eyes that broke me. They were the same eyes from childhood, the ones that used to look at me like I could fix anything, solve any problem, make the world safe again. He picked up the phone on his side. I picked up mine. Simone. His voice cracked on my name. You shouldn't have come. You shouldn't. What did you do, Winston? Silence. He couldn't meet my eyes now, staring instead at the scarred surface of the metal table between us. Win. Look at me. He raised his eyes slowly, and for the first time in my life, I didn't recognize him. This wasn't the little boy I'd raised. This wasn't my brother who called every Sunday, who remembered my birthday every year, who'd held my hand at Mama's grave and whispered, "We're going to be okay, right, Sim? Is it true? Was there a woman in your basement?" The pause stretched too long. Then, barely audible, "Yes." The word hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles went white. Why? I didn't mean for it to happen. I didn't plan it, Sim. It started with Alicia. She was working in my office, and she was so pretty, so young and full of life. I just wanted to talk to her, to be near her. But she kept rejecting me, kept making excuses when I asked her to dinner, to coffee, to anything. And I realized she was going to quit. She was going to leave just like everyone leaves. So I couldn't let her go. I just wanted her to stay. You kidnapped her. My voice sounded hollow, distant, like it was coming from someone else. You kept a human being in chains in your basement for 6 months. I never hurt her. Not really. I gave her food, blankets, books to read. I talked to her like a person. I just wanted company, Sim. After Sandra left, after everyone else left, I was so lonely. And Alicia, she listened. She talked to me. She stayed. Because you chained her to a wall. The words came out too loud, and the guard at the door shifted his attention to us. I lowered my voice. Win, do you hear yourself? She didn't stay because she wanted to. She stayed because you imprisoned her. She would have understood eventually. She would have seen that I was good to her, that I would take care of her, that she didn't need anyone else. Jesus Christ, Winston. I put my hand over my mouth, fighting nausea. You sound insane. Do you even understand what you've done? Sim, please. You're all I have. Don't abandon me. You promised you'd always be there. Remember? At Mama's funeral, you promised. I promised to raise you, not to lie for you, not to cover up for a monster. I'm not a monster. His voice rose sharply, drawing looks from other visitors. I'm your brother, the boy you raised, remember? You used to call me your baby, your sunshine, your reason for everything. You said I made Mama's death mean something because at least she left us with each other. My sunshine would never lock women in his basement. Tears were streaming down my face now, hot and unstoppable. What happened to you? When did you become this? Winston's face changed, hardened. I've always been this, Sim. You just didn't want to see it. Remember that girl in high school who said I followed her home? Crystal Montgomery? You told her parents she was mistaken, that Wynn was just shy and awkward. Remember when Sandra filed for divorce and said I'd installed tracking software on her phone, that I monitored her every move? You said she was paranoid, trying to make me look bad to get a better settlement. You always chose to believe me. Why stop now? Memory crashed over me like cold water. Crystal Montgomery, crying in my classroom after school, saying Winston had been showing up places she went, the library, the grocery store, her church, just standing there watching her. I dismissed it as a misunderstanding. He was only 15, shy, socially awkward. Of course he'd develop a crush. Of course he'd be clumsy about it. Sandra's divorce papers, citing controlling behavior, invasion of privacy, emotional abuse, and escalating possessiveness. I'd thought she was exaggerating, painting Winston in the worst light to improve her position. I'd even testified for him during the proceedings, describing him as a devoted husband who just worried about his wife's safety. How many times had I protected him? How many red flags had I explained away because the alternative was unthinkable? The other women, I whispered. Jessica and Tamara. Where are they, Winston? His face went blank, expressionless. I don't know what you're talking about. Winston, please. The police showed me their pictures. They both worked for you. They both disappeared. If they're alive, if there's any chance we can save them. I want my lawyer. I'm not saying anything else without my lawyer. Wynn, time's up, the guard announced. Visiting hours are over. They started to lead him away. He looked back once, and the expression on his face made me understand something terrible. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't ashamed. He was just sorry he'd been caught. Sim, he called out as they pushed him toward the door. Don't abandon me. You're all I have. You promised. The door slammed shut, cutting off his voice. I sat there alone in that horrible room, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to dead air, and finally understood what Grandma Rose had meant. Blood doesn't mean loyalty. Blood doesn't mean protecting monsters just because you love them. Truth over blood. I touched the ring and made my choice. 2 days after the arrest, the phone calls started the day after I visited Winston in jail. First, my Aunt Patricia, Winston's godmother, the woman who'd shown up to exactly 3 events in his entire life, but now suddenly cared deeply about family loyalty. Simone, what are you doing? Everyone's talking about how you're helping the police, against your own brother, your own blood. I gripped the phone, my hand shaking. Aunt Patricia, there are 3 women. I don't care about those women. I care about Winston, that boy you raised who you promised to protect. How can you turn your back on him now when he needs you most? He kidnapped them. He kept them in chains. He alleged. It's all alleged until proven in court. And here you are, helping them build a case against him. You know what people are saying? They're saying you're trying to save your own reputation, that you feel guilty for raising a criminal, so you're throwing him under the bus to make yourself look better. The accusation landed like a punch. That's not. You made him dependent on you his whole life. You were all he had. And the first time he makes a mistake, you abandon him? What kind of sister does that? This isn't a mistake. This is. Family is everything, Simone. Everything. And you're destroying ours. She hung up before I could respond. The next call came an hour later. Uncle Raymond, Mama's brother, who'd never sent Winston a birthday card, but now had strong opinions about my choices. Your grandmother would be ashamed of you. That one cut deeper than the rest. Grandma Rose gave me this ring. She told me, "Don't you dare speak about my mother. She believed in family first, always. And here you are, betraying your brother to strangers." Uncle Ray, if you'd seen what I saw, I don't need to see anything. I know Winston. We all know Winston. He's a good boy who's had some troubles. Maybe he did something stupid. Maybe he got confused, got obsessed with some girl who led him on. But that doesn't mean you destroy his whole life. He destroyed 3 women's lives. And you're going to destroy what's left of this family. When this is over, when the truth comes out and Winston's exonerated, everyone will remember what you did. Everyone will remember that you chose strangers over your own blood. After he hung up, I sat staring at my phone. More calls came. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Family friends. All with the same message. I was a traitor. I was breaking the sacred bond of family. I was choosing the wrong side. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Winston's Aunt Diane, Mama's younger sister who I'd actually been close to growing up. "What you're doing is unforgivable. Don't bother coming to any more family events. You're dead to us." I turned off my phone and sat in the dark, wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. Wondering if protecting those women was worth losing everyone I had left. Then I looked down at Grandma Rose's ring, at those words engraved in gold. Truth over blood. And I remembered Alicia's face in that hospital bed, the bandages on her wrists where chains had cut into her skin for 6 months, the hollow look in her eyes. I turned my phone back on and kept it off for the rest of the week. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with every photo album I owned spread before me, looking for signs I'd missed, clues I'd ignored, evidence that should have warned me. Winston at age 10, in a class photo from elementary school. I looked closer at the image and realized he was standing awkwardly close to a girl in the front row, his hand on her shoulder when everyone else stood separate. Had I noticed that before? Had I just seen it as normal childhood behavior? Winston at 13, in his bedroom. I'd taken the photo to capture his pride in his new computer, something I'd saved for months to buy him. But now I looked at the background, at the bulletin board on his wall. Were those photos of girls from school? Girls who didn't know he'd taken their pictures? Winston at 17, the week before Sandra filed for divorce. I'd visited for Sunday dinner and noticed scratches on his neck, fresh and angry. He said they'd happened at a construction site. A branch had caught him. But now I wondered, had Sandra fought back? Had she tried to defend herself? How had I not seen it? How had I convinced myself for so long that he was just misunderstood, just awkward, just struggling with relationships like many people do? My phone buzzed. A text from my principal, Dorothy Hayes, a woman who'd been my mentor for 10 years. "Saw the news. Take whatever time you need. We're here for you." The news. I turned on the TV with shaking hands and saw Winston's face plastered across every local channel. Prominent Atlanta contractor arrested in kidnapping case. 3 women missing, 1 found alive in basement prison. Suspected serial predator operated for years. My brother, my baby brother who I'd sacrificed my youth to raise, a serial predator. The phone rang again. Detective Chen. Ms. Bennett, I'm sorry to call so late, but we need your help. Alicia Thornton has been talking to our victim advocates. She's traumatized but determined to help us find Jessica and Tamara. She says Winston mentioned you frequently while he was holding her captive. He talked about how you were the only person who truly understood him, the only one who'd never abandon him. She thinks, and our behavioral analyst agrees, that he might have told you things over the years, left clues, said something that didn't make sense at the time but could help us now. I don't know anything. I swear I would have. I believe you didn't know consciously, but would you be willing to come in tomorrow and talk to our profiler? Sometimes in conversation things emerge, memories that seemed innocent at the time but take on new meaning with context, and we'd like you to look through his properties with us. Sometimes family can spot things others miss because you know the person's history, their habits, their hiding places. I thought of those women. Jessica Reeves, 24 years old. Tamara Washington, 23. Somebody's daughters, somebody's sisters, somebody's friends who'd been searching for them, praying for them, never giving up hope. I thought of Grandma Rose, speaking truth in 1867 when truth could get you killed. Yes, I'll help. Whatever you need. 1 week later, West End High School. I returned to work on a Monday morning, after a week of personal leave that everyone knew was code for my brother was arrested for kidnapping. Principal Hayes had called to say I could take more time, but staying home meant being alone with my thoughts, and that was worse than facing the whispers. When I walked into the teacher's lounge, conversation stopped. 8 teachers froze mid-sentence, coffee cups halfway to lips, eyes suddenly finding the floor fascinating. "Morning," I said, heading for my mailbox. "Simone." That was Margaret Chen, who'd taught social studies for 20 years and never minced words. "How are you holding up?" "I'm okay. Just needed to get back to routine." "We saw the news," another teacher said quietly. "Thomas Rodriguez, young, well-meaning, uncomfortable. That must be... I can't even imagine." "It's been difficult." An awkward silence stretched. Then Karen Williams, who taught math and had never particularly liked me, spoke up. "Must run in the family." The room went cold. "Excuse me?" I turned to face her. "Just saying. You raised him. Maybe if you'd paid more attention, noticed the signs, those girls wouldn't have..." "Karen." Principal Hayes appeared in the doorway, her voice sharp. "My office. Now." Karen left, shooting me a look that said she'd only spoken what others were thinking. Hayes touched my shoulder. "Ignore her. She's always been bitter. Simone, if you need anything..." "I just need normal. I need to teach my kids in grade papers and pretend the world isn't falling apart." But normal proved impossible. In my first period class, I felt the students' eyes on me differently. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked curious, hungry for gossip. A few looked scared, like maybe I was dangerous too, like violence was hereditary. I opened my copy of The Crucible and tried to focus on Proctor's moral dilemma, but the irony wasn't lost on anyone. "Ms. Bennett?" It was Deshawn, one of my brightest students. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." In the play, Proctor has to choose between his reputation and telling the truth, even though telling the truth means admitting he did something wrong. Do you think that's always the right choice? Even if it hurts people you love? The whole class went silent, waiting for my answer. They all knew. Of course they knew. I touched Grandma Rose's ring. "Yes, Deshawn." I think truth is always the right choice, even when it costs you everything. But what about loyalty? Don't you owe loyalty to family? You owe loyalty to what's right, to justice, to protecting innocent people. That's a higher loyalty than blood. A girl in the back, Jasmine, quiet, usually didn't speak much, raised her hand. Ms. Bennett, my mama says what you did was brave. She says you saved those women. Tears burned my eyes. Thank you, Jasmine. That means more than you know. After class, several students lingered. One girl handed me a note. My uncle did something bad to my cousin. Nobody believed her. Thank you for believing those women. Thank you for being brave. I sat at my desk after they left and cried for 20 minutes straight. Then I dried my eyes, fixed my makeup, and taught my next class. The next morning, I sat in a conference room at the police station with Detective Chen, a behavioral analyst named Dr. Marcus Webb, and 2 other detectives working the case. They'd spread Winston's life across the table. Property records, employment files, bank statements, phone records going back years. Walk us through your brother's routine, Dr. Webb said. He was in his 50s, African American, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. The Sunday phone calls, the dinners, the conversations. What did he talk about? I closed my eyes, trying to remember. Work, mostly. He loved his business. He'd talk about projects, about problems with contractors or delays or budget issues. He'd ask about my teaching, about my students. He liked hearing about their lives, their challenges. I stopped. Something clicked. What is it? Chen leaned forward. He always asked about the girls, my female students. Not in a creepy way, or at least I didn't think it was creepy. He'd ask how they were doing, if they felt safe, if they had good home lives. I thought he was being caring, interested in their well-being. But now you're wondering if he was profiling potential victims, Dr. Webb said gently. That's a common pattern with predators who have access to vulnerable populations. They gather information, assess risk, identify targets. My stomach turned. He never met my students. I never brought him to school events But he knew about them. Their names, their situations, their vulnerabilities. Did he ever suggest helping any of them? Offering jobs or resources? I rifled through memories. Last year, there was a girl, Destiny Williams. She was struggling, needed work to help her family. I mentioned it to Winston, and he said if she was over 18, she could do some filing work at his office. I gave her his business card. Did she take the job? I don't know. She dropped out a week later. I always assumed she'd moved or... Oh, God. The room spun. Did he? We'll check. What's her full name? I gave them everything I remembered about Destiny. They sent officers to find her immediately. For the next 3 hours, we went through Winston's life piece by piece. Properties he owned, places he had access to, habits and patterns I'd observed over the years without understanding their significance. He bought land, I remembered suddenly. About a year ago, 40 acres near Lake Allatoona. Said he was going to build his retirement property there someday, get away from the city. It's completely undeveloped, just woods and hills. Chen and Dr. Webb exchanged looks. He's mentioned this property to you multiple times? A few times. He said it was his escape, his place to think. I didn't think anything of it. Does he have any structures there? Hunting cabin, storage shed, anything? I don't know. I've never been there. We need to search that property immediately, Chen said to the other detectives. Get a team together. Priority 1. As they mobilized, Dr. Webb stayed with me. Ms. Bennett, I need to prepare you for something. We're going to ask you to meet with Alicia Thornton. Not because you did anything wrong, but because she's asked to speak with you. She wants to understand Winston through the eyes of someone who loved him. Are you willing?" Every instinct screamed no. How could I face this woman my brother had tortured? But I thought of Grandma Rose again, of courage that costs everything. Yes, I'll meet her. 2 hours later. The hospital. Alicia Thornton was in a private room at Grady Hospital, surrounded by victim advocates and her family. When I entered, her mother, a woman about my age with exhausted eyes, stood up defensively. "Why is she here?" Mrs. Thornton demanded. "That monster's sister." "Mama, I asked her to come," Alicia said quietly. She looked fragile in the hospital bed, 22 but seeming much younger, with bandages on her wrists where the chains had cut into her skin. "I need to talk to her." "Baby, you don't owe her anything. Please, Mama, give us a few minutes." Mrs. Thornton gave me a look that could have melted steel, but she left, taking the advocates with her. Suddenly it was just me and this young woman my brother had destroyed. "I'm sorry," I said, the words pathetically inadequate. "I'm so sorry. If I had known—" "He talked about you all the time." Alicia's voice was soft but steady. "Every time he came down to bring me food, he'd talk about his sister Simone, how you raised him after your mama died, how you worked 2 jobs to keep him in school, how you gave up your own dreams so he could have his. He said you were the only person who ever really loved him." Tears burned my eyes. I did love him. God help me, I still do, even knowing what he did. He said you'd protect him, that you always had, that no matter what happened, you'd choose him because family is everything. She looked at me directly. "Are you going to?" "No." The word came out firm, certain. "I'm going to help them find the other women. I'm going to tell them everything I know, and when this goes to trial, I'm going to testify against him if they need me to." Alicia's eyes filled with tears. "He said you'd never abandon him. He was so sure." "He was wrong. Some things are more important than blood." "There are 2 other women," Alicia said, her voice breaking. "Jessica and Tamara. I heard them. When he thought I was asleep, he'd talk on his phone. He'd say he needed to check on the property, that he had to make sure they had supplies. Please help them find those women. Please. I promise. I'm going to do everything I can." As I left the hospital, Mrs. Thornton stopped me in the hallway. "You raised that monster," she said, her voice shaking with rage and grief. "You made him think he could take my daughter. I know, and I'll live with that for the rest of my life. But right now, I'm trying to fix it. I'm trying to save the others. It won't bring back the 6 months he stole from her, won't erase what she went through. No, nothing can do that, but maybe it can stop him from destroying anyone else." 4 hours later, Lake Allatoona. The search teams assembled at dawn. I led them to the coordinates Winston had sent me once via text, wanting to show me his piece of paradise. The property was 40 acres of dense Georgia woods, rolling hills, and kudzu-covered undergrowth that hadn't been touched in decades. "We're looking for any structure," the search coordinator explained to the assembled officers in K-9 units. "Cabin, shed, bunker, anything that could be used to hold someone. Spread out in grid formation and report anything unusual." I stayed with Detective Chen at the command center, a folding table with maps and radios. The sun climbed higher, hot and merciless. Hours passed. Teams checked in with negative reports. Then, around 2 p.m., a K-9 unit radioed in. "We've got something. Northeast quadrant, about half a mile from the access road. Structure built into a hillside, camouflaged with vegetation. Requires a key to enter. We're waiting for backup before breaching." Chen grabbed my arm. "Stay here. If they're in there, If they're alive, you don't want to see? I need to know. Please. She hesitated, then nodded. We drove a rough trail to where a cluster of vehicles had gathered. Officers in tactical gear surrounded what looked like a natural hillside, but was actually concrete covered in dirt and plants. A door was visible now that they'd cleared the brush. Steel, reinforced, with multiple locks. A battering ram made quick work of it. Police, we're coming in. I held my breath. Seconds felt like hours. Then a voice on the radio. We have them. 2 females alive. Get medical here now. Chen turned to me with tears in her eyes. They're alive, Ms. Bennett. Your information saved them. I collapsed against the truck, sobbing with relief and horror, and a grief so deep I thought I might drown in it. Alive. They were alive. Jessica Reeves and Tamara Washington were carried out on stretchers, malnourished and traumatized but breathing, conscious, able to tell their stories. They'd been held in a structure Winston had built himself, soundproof, climate-controlled, with supplies and a generator. He'd planned it meticulously, visited them regularly, kept them alive while the world searched in vain. My brother, my baby brother who I'd taught to ride a bike and do his homework. A calculated predator who'd built a prison and filled it with human beings. 3 months later, the trial. The trial drew national attention. The courtroom was packed every day with media, victim advocates, families of the women Winston had hurt, and people who just wanted to see justice served or fail. I sat in the back on most days, wearing my best dress and Grandma Rose's ring. I'd been subpoenaed by the prosecution. My testimony was considered crucial. Family members who turn on defendants carry immense weight with juries. Winston's lawyer, an expensive defense attorney named Robert Hawthorne, had tried every angle. Mental illness, claiming Winston suffered from attachment disorder due to childhood trauma. Diminished capacity, attempting to exclude evidence, challenging the search warrants, fighting to keep me off the witness stand, arguing I was a hostile witness motivated by misplaced guilt. But the judge allowed my testimony. The prosecutor was a woman named Diane Foster, mid-50s, with 20 years of experience and a reputation for caring about victims. She'd spent hours preparing me, warning me that the defense would try to discredit me, to paint me as someone seeking redemption at Winston's expense. Just tell the truth, she'd said. That's all we need. The truth. When my name was called, I walked to the witness stand on legs that barely held me. I avoided looking at the defense table where Winston sat in a suit that made him look respectable, normal, like someone's colleague or neighbor. His parents, my aunt and uncle who'd been absent most of his life, sat behind him, shooting me looks of pure hatred for betraying family. I placed my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. The ring on my right hand caught the courtroom lights. Ms. Bennett, Diane Foster began, her voice calm and professional. You raised your brother Winston Bennett after your mother's death. Is that correct? Yes, ma'am. I was 16. He was 7. Would you say you know him well? I thought I did. I thought I knew him better than anyone. Can you tell the jury about your relationship with the defendant? I took a deep breath and began. I told them about Mama's funeral, about the promise I'd made to a terrified 7-year-old, about working 2 jobs while finishing high school, then putting myself through community college at night while Winston was in school during the day, about the sacrifices I'd made gladly because I loved him, because he was all the family I had left. Would you say the defendant was dependent on you? Yes. Emotionally, certainly. I was more than a sister. I was his parent, his protector, his world. And did that dependence continue into adulthood? In some ways. He called me every Sunday without fail. We had dinner at least twice a month. He asked my advice on everything from business decisions to personal matters. He'd say, "You're the only one who really gets me, Sim." Now, Ms. Bennett, I need to ask you about some specific incidents. Are you aware of an incident in 1999 involving a classmate named Crystal Montgomery? My heart sank. Yes. Can you tell the jury what happened? Crystal came to me. I was her English teacher. She said Winston had been following her, showing up at places she went. She was scared. But my voice broke. I told her parents she must be mistaken. I said Winston was just shy and socially awkward, that he probably didn't realize he was making her uncomfortable. I convinced them not to report it to the police. And were there other similar incidents? His ex-wife, Sandra. The divorce papers cited controlling behavior, tracking software on her phone, monitoring her movements, constant accusations. I testified at the divorce hearing that she was exaggerating, that Winston just worried about her safety because he loved her so much. Looking back now, do you believe you were wrong to dismiss these concerns? Yes. Tears streamed down my face. Yes, I was wrong. I should have listened. I should have seen the pattern. But I didn't want to believe my brother could be capable of... I couldn't finish. After his arrest, did you cooperate with police? Yes. I helped them search his properties. I provided information that led them to Lake Allatoona, where Jessica Reeves and Tamara Washington were being held. And can you tell the jury why you decided to cooperate with law enforcement against your own brother? I looked at Winston then, really looked at him, and saw a stranger wearing my brother's face. Because protecting him would have meant abandoning those women. It would have meant letting him hurt more people. My grandmother used to tell me that truth is more important than blood. I finally understood what she meant. Diane nodded. Thank you, Ms. Bennett. No further questions. Then came the cross-examination. Robert Hawthorne approached with a sympathetic smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ms. Bennett, you love your brother, don't you? I do. And you feel guilty about what happened, don't you? You feel responsible for not seeing the signs earlier? Yes. Isn't it possible that you're testifying against your brother now not because of truth or justice, but because you're trying to assuage your own guilt? Trying to make yourself look better by distancing yourself from him? No. I'm testifying because it's the right thing to do. You raised him to be dependent on you, didn't you? You made yourself the center of his world, his only emotional support. And then you wonder why he had trouble forming healthy relationships with others? The accusation stung because part of me had wondered the same thing. But Diane objected. Sustained. Mr. Hawthorne, do not blame the victim's family member for the defendant's criminal choices. The cross-examination continued for another hour, but I held firm. I told the truth about Winston's behavior, about my own failings, about the moment I decided I couldn't protect him anymore. When I stepped down, I walked past Winston. He whispered my name. Sim. But I didn't stop. I walked out of that courtroom and didn't look back. Over the next 2 weeks, the prosecution called witnesses who painted a devastating picture. Alicia Thornton was first. She walked to the stand with her mother's hand gripping hers until the last possible moment. When she sat down, she looked so small in that chair, so young despite being 22. Ms. Thornton, Diane Foster began gently, can you tell the jury about your last day of freedom? Alicia's voice was barely above a whisper. It was October 15th. I'd been working at Bennett Construction for about a month, just temp work while I saved money for nursing school. That day, Mr. Bennett, Winston, asked if I could stay late to help organize some files. I said yes. I needed the overtime. What happened when the office emptied out? Around 7 p.m., he came to my desk, Said he wanted to show me something in the basement storage area. I followed him because he was my boss and I trusted him. She paused, tears sliding down her cheeks. The basement wasn't storage. It was a room. A room with chains on the wall and a mattress on the floor. I tried to run, but he grabbed me. He was so much stronger than he looked. What did he say to you? He said, "I'm not going to hurt you. I just want you to stay. Everyone always leaves me, but you're going to stay." Then he locked the chains around my wrists. She held up her arms, showing the jury the scars. These are from the first week when I fought. After that, I learned it was easier to just comply. Can you describe your daily routine during those 6 months? Alicia closed her eyes. He came 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, evening. He'd bring food, good food, like he was proud of taking care of me. He'd sit and talk for hours about his childhood, his sister who raised him, his ex-wife who left. He talked about love like it was the same thing as ownership. He said, "You'll understand eventually. You'll see that I'm good to you, that I'm the only one who truly cares." Did you try to escape? Every day at first. I screamed until my voice gave out, but the walls were soundproof. I tried to break the chains, but they were bolted into concrete. After a while, I just survived. I told myself every morning that someone would find me, that Simone, his sister, would figure it out because he talked about her constantly. He said Simone would understand. She's always understood me. I held on to that hope. The courtroom was silent except for muffled crying from the gallery. What was the worst part? The psychological torture. He truly believed he was loving me. He'd say things like, "I brought you your favorite dessert," or "I bought you new books." Like I was his girlfriend instead of his prisoner. Like the chains were just details. The scariest part was watching him convince himself that what he was doing was romantic instead of monstrous. When Alicia stepped down, every juror was crying. Jessica Reeves testified next. She was stronger, angrier, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. I met Winston when I applied for a payroll position at his company. He interviewed me himself, seemed professional, kind, asked about my family, my goals. I thought he was just being thorough. Now I know he was profiling me. Can you explain what you mean by profiling? I mentioned in the interview that I didn't have family nearby, that I'd moved to Atlanta for a fresh start after a bad breakup. I was isolated, vulnerable, exactly what he was looking for. He hired me immediately. When did things change? About 6 weeks into the job, he started asking me to work late, to have dinner with him to discuss payroll issues. When I said no, he got intense. He'd show up places I went, my gym, my grocery store, my church. When I tried to quit, he said I couldn't, that I'd signed a contract with a penalty clause if I left early. She laughed bitterly. There was no penalty clause, but I was scared, so I kept working. Then one day he asked me to meet him at a property he was developing. Said there was a payment issue he needed to show me on site. I went because I was stupid and trusting. What happened at the property? It wasn't a construction site. It was just woods. And in those woods was a structure he'd built that looked like a hunting cabin from outside but was a prison on the inside. He'd planned everything. There was food, water, blankets, books. He'd been preparing it for months. Her voice broke. For me. Specifically for me. How long were you held there? 14 months. 14 months of him visiting every few days, bringing supplies, talking to me like we were dating instead of him being my captor. He'd bring flowers. Flowers! Like that made it romantic instead of horrifying. Did he ever indicate he'd done this before? Yes. In the early months, he'd slip. He'd say things like, "The last girl didn't appreciate what I did for her," or, "You're better than the others." I realized I wasn't the first. That terrified me more than anything, that he'd perfected this system. What kept you hoping for rescue? Rage. Pure rage. I decided if I survived, I'd make sure the whole world knew what Winston Bennett really was. I scratched my name into the wall of that prison with a nail I pulled from the floorboard. I wrote messages hoping someone would find them. I survived because I wanted to see him pay. She stared directly at Winston. And now I get to watch him pay. The third day, Tamara Washington took the stand. She was the youngest, 23, but her 8 months in captivity had aged her. Ms. Washington, how did you come to work for the defendant? Through a friend. I'd just finished community college and needed a job. Winston was looking for a receptionist. The pay was good. The hours were flexible. It seemed perfect. When did you realize something was wrong? Maybe the second week. He was always watching me. Not in a boss checking on employee way, but in a way that made my skin crawl. He knew things about me I hadn't told him. Where I lived, what car I drove, my mother's name. When I asked how he knew, he just smiled and said, I like to know about my employees. What happened the day you disappeared? Tamara took a shaky breath. He asked me to help him deliver some documents to a property owner. Said the secretary usually did it, but she was out sick. I didn't want to go, but I needed the job. We drove for almost an hour, way out past Lake Allatoona. When we got there, there was nothing but woods. No property owner, no one else around. I knew then that I'd made a terrible mistake. How did he restrain you? He pulled a gun, just pulled it out of his jacket and pointed it at me. Said, I don't want to use this, but I will if you make me. Just come with me and everything will be okay. I was so scared I couldn't even scream. He walked me to this structure hidden in the hillside, and once we were inside, he locked the door and put the gun away. Said, I won't need this anymore. You'll understand eventually. What was life like during those 8 months? Lonely. He only came every 3 or 4 days because the property was so remote. He'd bring supplies, food, water, batteries for the lantern. He'd stay for hours talking about his life, his dreams, asking about mine like we were on a date. When I'd cry or beg to leave, he'd get upset. He'd say, Why are you being like this? I'm treating you well. I'm taking care of you. Why can't you just appreciate what we have? Did you believe you'd be rescued? After the first month, no. I thought I was going to die there, that he'd get tired of me or forget about me and I'd just starve in that bunker. When the police broke down that door and said I was free, I couldn't believe it. I thought I was hallucinating. Even now, sometimes I wake up and think I'm still there, that this is all a dream and I'm going to wake up in that prison. She looked at the jury. Please don't let him do this to anyone else. Please. When all 3 women had testified, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. The defense attorney tried to create doubt, suggesting they'd coordinated their stories, that they were motivated by publicity or money. But the physical evidence backed up every word. The chains, the structures, the meticulously kept supplies. Winston's own phone records showing repeated trips to both locations. Photos he'd taken of the women while they were captive, stored on his personal computer like vacation photos. Expert witnesses explained predatory behavior, control patterns, the way Winston had carefully selected vulnerable women and systematically isolated them. The defense tried to paint Winston as mentally ill, a victim of his own childhood trauma. But the evidence of premeditation, the specially built rooms, the carefully maintained supplies, the rotation schedule that kept him from being caught, undermined that argument. 2 weeks before sentencing, the first letter arrived on a Tuesday. Plain white envelope, Winston's handwriting on the front. I almost threw it away unopened, but something made me keep it. That night I sat at my kitchen table and read it. Dear Simone, I know you're angry with me. I know you think I'm a monster. But I need you to understand something. Everything I did because I was broken. Because when Mama died, a part of me died too. And the only thing that kept me together was you. You were my whole world, Sim. My mother, my sister, my everything. And then you left for college and I felt like I was drowning again. Every woman I ever got close to reminded me of that feeling, that terror of being abandoned, of being alone. I couldn't let it happen again. Can't you understand that? I'm not asking you to forgive what I did. I'm asking you to remember who I was before. The little boy who held your hand at Mama's funeral. The teenager who cried when you left for school. The man who called you every Sunday because you were the only thing keeping me human. Don't let them turn you against me completely. I'm still your brother. I'm still the boy you raised. Please come visit me. Please. Love. Win. I read it 3 times, and each time I felt myself wavering. He was right about one thing. He had been that little boy, that teenager, that man who needed me. The second letter came 3 days later. Simone. You didn't respond to my last letter. Are you that far gone? Have they completely poisoned you against me? Think about all the years I was good, all the times I helped you, supported you, was there for you. Don't those years count for something? Don't I get any credit for all the times I wasn't a monster? They're painting me as this calculated predator, but you know the truth. You know I'm just damaged. I'm just someone who loved too much and didn't know how to let go. Is that really worth throwing away our entire history? Remember that Christmas when I bought you that car because yours died? Remember when I sat with you in the hospital when you had pneumonia and didn't leave your side for 3 days? Remember all the times I was a good brother? Those memories are real too. Don't erase them just because I made mistakes. Your brother, Winston. This one hit harder, because he was right. He had been there for me. He had been a good brother for so many years. Maybe I was erasing all the good along with the bad. The third letter came a week later. Sim. I had a dream last night about Mama's funeral. You held my hand so tight I thought my bones would break. But I didn't let go because you were all I had. I woke up crying because I realized I'm still that little boy, Sim. I'm still scared and alone and desperate for someone to hold my hand. What I did was wrong. I know that now. But I did it because I was terrified of being alone again, of losing everyone like I lost Mama, like I lost you when you went to college, like I lost Sandra when she left. If you'd just visit me once, let me explain. Maybe you'd understand. Maybe you'd see that I'm not the monster they're making me out to be. I'm just your baby brother who never learned how to let people go. Please, Sim, I'm begging you. Don't abandon me like everyone else did. You're all I have left. Forever your brother. Win. I sat staring at that letter for over an hour. Then I did something I hadn't done since the arrest. I almost picked up the phone to call the jail and request a visit. My finger was hovering over the dial button when I caught sight of Grandma Rose's ring. Truth over blood. I put the phone down and opened my laptop instead. I Googled manipulation tactics of abusers. Every single technique was in Winston's letters. The guilt tripping, the selective memory, the reframing of his crimes as mistakes, born of love, the reminder of good times to make me doubt my choices, the positioning of himself as the victim. He was still trying to control me, even from jail, still trying to use our history, my love, my guilt as weapons. I took all 3 letters, carried them to the kitchen sink, and burned them one by one, watched the paper curl and blacken and turn to ash. Then I sat down and wrote back, the only letter I would ever send. Winston. I received your letters. All of them were manipulation disguised as vulnerability. I'm not visiting you. I'm not writing back again. The little boy from Mama's funeral doesn't exist anymore. If he ever did, he died somewhere along the way to making room for what you became. You didn't make mistakes. You made choices. You built prisons. You hunted vulnerable women. You kept them like possessions. And now you're trying to make me feel guilty for not enabling you further. I do remember the good times, but they don't erase the horror. They don't save you, and they don't obligate me to stand by you while you destroy more lives. Grandma Rose gave me a ring with an inscription, "Truth over blood." I finally understand what it means. It means that doing right is more important than loyalty to family. It means that protecting the innocent matters more than protecting the guilty, even when the guilty is someone you love. I'm not abandoning you. You abandoned yourself when you chose to hurt those women. I'm just choosing not to follow you into that darkness. Goodbye, Winston. I hope someday you understand why I had to choose this way. But even if you never do, I know I made the right choice. Simone. I mailed it that night. He wrote back twice more, but I never opened those letters. I burned them without reading, and eventually they stopped coming. On the final day, Winston took the stand against his lawyer's advice. He tried to explain himself, to make the jury understand his loneliness, his fear of abandonment. "I just didn't want to be alone," he said, tears streaming down his face. "Everyone leaves. My mother died. My sister left for college. Sandra left. I just wanted someone who would stay." But under cross-examination, Diane dismantled him. "Mr. Bennett, when Alicia Thornton begged you to let her go, what did you say?" "I told her she'd understand eventually, that she'd see I was good to her." "When she screamed for help, what did you do?" "The room was soundproof. No one could hear." "When she fought against the chains, bruising her wrists, did you remove the chains?" "No. She might have tried to escape." "So you knew she didn't want to be there. You knew she was suffering, but you kept her anyway because your desire to not be alone was more important than her freedom." Yes. But I never meant to hurt anyone." "You imprisoned 3 women for months against their will. That was the hurt, Mr. Bennett. The whole thing was the hurt." The jury deliberated for 7 hours. When they returned, the foreman read the verdict on a silent courtroom. Count 1, kidnapping in the first degree. Guilty. Count 2, kidnapping in the first degree. Guilty. Count 3, kidnapping in the first degree. Guilty. Count 4, false imprisonment. Guilty. Count 5, aggravated assault. Guilty. Guilty on every single count. The judge scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks later. As they led Winston away in handcuffs, he looked at me one final time, and the expression on his face, not anger, not hatred, just profound confusion, broke my heart one last time. He genuinely didn't understand why I'd chosen truth over blood, why I'd chosen justice over family, and that, more than anything, showed me I'd made the right choice. Sentencing day. 2 weeks later, we gathered again. Before the judge pronounced sentence, he allowed victim impact statements. Alicia stood first, her mother beside her for support. "Winston Bennett stole 6 months of my life. He made me believe I was going to die in that basement. But I survived, and every day I'm reclaiming what he took. I hope the sentence reflects the seriousness of what he did, not just to me, but to all of us." Jessica spoke next, her voice stronger than I expected. "For 14 months, my family thought I was dead. My mother had a heart attack from the stress. My little sister developed anxiety disorder. The damage extends beyond just the victims. I hope the court considers that." Tomorrow was last. 8 months I spent in that prison he built. But I'm free now. He's not. And I hope he never gets out. I hope he spends the rest of his life knowing what it feels like to have no freedom, no choice, no hope. Then the judge spoke. Winston Bennett, you have been convicted on multiple counts of kidnapping and related offenses. I have reviewed the evidence, the testimony, and the psychological evaluations. I have heard from your victims, and I must say, in my 25 years on the bench, I have rarely encountered such calculated cruelty disguised as loneliness. He paused, looking directly at Winston. You built prisons. You hunted vulnerable women. You kept them like possessions. And throughout this trial, you have shown no genuine remorse, only self-pity. I hereby sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole on each count of kidnapping, to run consecutively. Additionally, 15 years on each count of false imprisonment and aggravated assault, also consecutive. You will spend the rest of your natural life in prison, Mr. Bennett. You will never again be free to harm another human being. Life without parole. Times 3. Plus additional years. Winston would die in prison. Around me, I heard the families of the victims crying with relief. Alicia's mother was sobbing. Jessica's sister was hugging her tightly. Tamara sat with her eyes closed, breathing deeply, finally allowing herself to believe it was over. As they led Winston away one final time, he looked at me, and I saw the moment he finally understood. I had chosen truth over blood, justice over family, right over wrong. He mouthed one word: why? I touched Grandma Rose's ring and thought of her testifying in 1867, of Charity wearing this ring in a courtroom when truth could cost your life, of every woman in our line who'd chosen righteousness over safety. And I mouthed back, because it was right. Epilogue. 1 year later, I still teach 9th grade English at West End High. I still live in the same house, grade papers at the same kitchen table, watch the same sunlight stream through the windows. But everything is different. 6 months after Winston's sentencing, something unexpected happened. I was in the produce section of Kroger on a Saturday morning, trying to decide between red and green apples, when I heard a voice behind me. Ms. Bennett? I turned and saw Alicia Thornton standing 3 feet away, holding a shopping basket. My first instinct was to apologize and walk away. Surely she didn't want to see me, didn't want to be reminded, but she was smiling. It was a small smile, tentative, but real. Alicia. Hi. I'm sorry, I can leave if... No, please. I've been hoping I'd run into you. She shifted her weight, nervous. Can we talk? Maybe grab coffee? 20 minutes later, we sat in a corner booth at the Starbucks on Lee Street. Alicia held her cup with both hands, like she was trying to warm herself despite the Georgia heat outside. I wanted to thank you, she said finally. I know that sounds strange, thanking the sister of the man who... She stopped, took a breath. But you saved my life. If you hadn't helped the police, they might never have found Jessica and Tamara. You chose us over him. That took courage. Tears burned my eyes. I should have seen it sooner. All the signs were there and I ignored them. If I'd paid attention, you wouldn't have gone through. Stop. Her voice was firm. You're not responsible for what he did. He is. And when you finally saw the truth, you acted on it. A lot of people wouldn't have. A lot of people would have protected him anyway, made excuses, blamed us. You didn't. How are you doing? Really? She was quiet for a long moment. Some days are good. I'm back in school. Started nursing classes last month. My therapist says that's a healthy way to reclaim what he tried to take from me. Other days I wake up in a panic, convinced I'm back in that basement. But I'm healing. Slowly. I'm glad. You deserve every good thing. So do you. She reached across the table and touched my hand briefly. Don't carry his guilt. You're not him. You proved that when it mattered. We talked for another hour. She told me about her plans to specialize in trauma nursing, about her mother's overprotectiveness that was slowly easing, about the support group she'd joined with Jessica and Tamara. We call ourselves the Survivors Circle, she said with a slight smile. We meet every Thursday, help each other through the bad days, celebrate the good ones. You should come sometime. Me? But I'm not a survivor. You survived too, just in a different way. You lost your brother to the truth. That's its own kind of trauma. I thought about her invitation for days. Finally, one Thursday evening, I drove to the address she'd given me, a community center in East Point. The meeting room was small, filled with a dozen women of different ages, all survivors of various traumas. Alicia spotted me and waved me in. Jessica and Tamara were there too. When they saw me, I expected anger or resentment. Instead, Jessica stood and hugged me. Thank you for choosing right, she whispered in my ear. Thank you for saving us. I attended every Thursday after that. Not to speak, I mostly just listened, but to understand the full weight of what Winston had done, to see the aftermath through their eyes. And slowly, through their stories of survival and strength, I learned how to forgive myself for not seeing sooner. The scholarship fund I established grew beyond anything I'd expected. Within a year, we'd given full rides to 6 young women from difficult circumstances, all pursuing careers in nursing, social work, and counseling. Women who wanted to help other survivors. At the first scholarship ceremony, Alicia spoke to the recipients. You're receiving this because someone chose truth over comfort. Someone chose justice over family loyalty. Someone proved that doing the right thing matters more than doing the easy thing. Honor that choice by using your education to help others. I sat in the back row, crying quietly, as these young women, these bright, hopeful survivors, accepted their awards. This was Winston's legacy now, transformed, his violence funding their futures, his darkness creating light. I still teach 9th grade English at West End High. My students know my story. Everyone does. But they treat me with a respect I never expected. Some of them confide in me now about their own family struggles, their own secrets. Last month, a girl named Keisha stayed after class. She was quiet, withdrawn, often had bruises she claimed came from basketball. Ms. Bennett, can I tell you something? Of course, sweetie. My uncle, he's been touching me. My mama doesn't believe me. She says I'm making it up for attention, but I'm not. I swear I'm not. I looked at this child, this brave girl who'd finally spoken her truth, and I thought of Crystal Montgomery, who I'd dismissed 20 years ago, of all the victims I could have saved if I'd chosen to see. I believe you, Keisha, and we're going to make sure you're safe. I called Principal Hayes. We called DFCS. We called the police. Within 48 hours, Keisha was removed from that house and placed with her grandmother. Her uncle was arrested. That night, I touched Grandma Rose's ring and felt her approval across the years. This was what the inscription meant: truth over blood, protecting the innocent over protecting family. Some nights I still dream of Winston at 7, crying at Mama's funeral. But now, when I wake up, I don't feel guilty for not saving him. Because the truth is, I did save him. I saved him from being a 7-year-old raised by the foster system. I saved him from hunger and homelessness and uncertainty. What I couldn't save him from was himself. Dr. Webb, the behavioral analyst, explained it to me once over coffee. You gave him every advantage: love, stability, education, support. But some people have something broken inside them that no amount of love can fix. That's not your failure. That's just a tragic reality. But if I'd gotten him therapy when he was young, if I'd recognized the signs, maybe. Or maybe he'd still be exactly who he is, just with more tools to hide it. You can't take responsibility for the choices another person makes, even if you love them, even if you raised them. Those words helped. Not completely, but enough. I visited Grandma Rose's grave on the anniversary of Winston's sentencing, brought fresh flowers and sat in the grass, touching the ring on my finger. You were right, Grandma. About everything. Truth over blood. It almost killed me to choose it, but it saved lives. I hope you're proud. A soft breeze rustled the leaves overhead. I chose to believe it was her answer. My family never forgave me. Aunt Patricia, Uncle Raymond, all the cousins who called me a traitor, they stopped speaking to me entirely. I'm not invited to reunions or holidays. I've been erased from family photos, blocked on social media, treated like I never existed. Some days that hurts more than I can express. But other days, I remember Alicia's words. You chose us over him. And I know I'd make the same choice 1,000 times over. 2 years after Winston's conviction, I published an essay in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution titled, When Family is the Monster, Choosing Truth Over Blood. I wrote about Grandma Rose's ring, about the choice I had to make, about the cost of truth and the higher cost of silence. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of emails from people who'd faced similar choices, whether to protect a family member or protect the innocent. Many thanked me for giving them permission to choose truth. Some cursed me for betraying family. One email stood out. It was from Crystal Montgomery, the girl Winston had stalked in high school. Ms. Bennett. I read your essay and cried for an hour. When I was 15 and scared, you didn't believe me. You protected your brother over me. That hurt so much that I didn't trust teachers for years. But what you did later, helping those women, testifying against him, choosing truth even when it destroyed your family, that took a courage I'm not sure I could have managed. I forgive you for not believing me back then, and I hope you can forgive yourself too. You chose right when it mattered most. That counts for something. Crystal. I printed that email and keep it in my desk drawer. On the hard days, when the guilt threatens to drown me, I read it and remember. I chose right when it mattered most. Last week, during a lesson on the crucible, a student asked the question that started this whole journey. Ms. Bennett, what would you do if telling the truth meant losing everyone you love? I looked at him, a 16-year-old kid trying to understand morality in a complicated world, and I touched Grandma Rose's ring. I'd tell the truth, I said, because the people you lose by telling the truth were never truly yours to begin with, and the person you'd lose by staying silent, yourself, is the only person you can never replace. He nodded slowly. That's deep, Ms. Bennett. That's life, Michael. That's life. 3 years later, the Survivors Circle celebrated its 3rd anniversary at a community center in downtown Atlanta. What started as 3 women and me had grown to over 50 survivors, all supporting each other through healing. Alicia had finished nursing school and gotten a job at Grady Hospital in the trauma unit. Jessica was in graduate school for social work. Tamara had started a nonprofit that helped formerly incarcerated people find housing and employment. They'd all transformed their pain into purpose. At the anniversary celebration, they asked me to speak. I stood in front of these incredible women, survivors all, and felt the weight of Grandma Rose's ring on my finger. 3 years ago, my world fell apart when I learned the truth about my brother. I lost my family, my history, my sense of who I was. But I gained something more valuable, I gained all of you. You taught me that family isn't just blood. Family is the people who show up when the world burns down. The people who believe you when you speak truth. The people who transform trauma into strength. I paused, emotion catching in my throat. Winston took so much from you, from all of us, but he couldn't take your power to heal, your power to help others, your power to prove that surviving isn't just about making it through. It's about making the world better because you made it through. The room erupted in applause. Afterward, a young woman approached me, maybe 25, nervous, hopeful. Ms. Bennett? My name is Destiny Williams. You probably don't remember me, but I was your student 5 years ago. You gave me Winston's business card, said he might have work for me. I never called him. Something felt off. But I heard what happened, and I just wanted to thank you. If you hadn't stopped him when you did, I might have been next. I hugged her tight. This young woman I'd unknowingly almost fed to a predator. This girl who'd listened to her instincts and survived. Thank you for trusting yourself, I whispered. Thank you for staying safe. Present day. I'm 49 now. Winston has been in prison for 3 years and will die there. I haven't visited him. I never will. But I think about him sometimes. Wonder if he's changed, if he understands what he did, if he feels genuine remorse, or if he's still the same man who looked at me in that courtroom and couldn't understand why I chose truth over blood. I hope he's found some peace, not for his sake, but for mine. Because carrying hatred is exhausting, and I've learned that forgiveness doesn't mean excusing what he did. It means choosing not to let his actions destroy me, too. I still wear Grandma Rose's ring every day. The inscription has worn down slightly from years of me touching it, running my finger over those words when I need strength or courage or just a reminder of who I am. Truth over blood. Those 3 words changed my life. Cost me my family, saved 3 women's lives, taught me that doing right isn't about comfort or loyalty. It's about choosing justice even when justice hurts. My students see the ring sometimes and ask about it. I tell them the story, not just about Winston, but about Charity wearing this ring in 1867, about Grandma Rose giving it to me with a warning I didn't understand until I needed it. Why is truth more important than blood? They ask. And I tell them, because blood just means you share DNA. Truth means you share values, and values are what make you who you are. Blood is an accident. Truth is a choice. Last month, one of my students, a quiet girl named Amara, wrote an essay about moral courage. She ended it with this line: Ms. Bennett taught me that being brave doesn't mean never being scared. It means doing the right thing even when you're terrified, especially when you're terrified. I kept that essay, framed it next to Crystal's email and Alicia's thank you note. These are my treasures now, not family photos or shared memories, but evidence that choosing truth created ripples that spread wider than I ever imagined. Sometimes people ask if I regret it. Regret losing my family, losing Winston, losing the life I thought I'd have. And I answer honestly, every single day. But I'd do it again every single day too. Because regret and rightness aren't opposites. You can mourn what you lost and still know you made the only choice you could live with. I lost my brother, but I kept my soul. I lost my family, but I gained a circle of survivors who taught me more about strength and courage than blood ever could. I lost my past, but I built a future where I help protect the vulnerable instead of enabling their predators. Winston is in prison. He'll die there. And I'll carry the weight of that for the rest of my life. The knowledge that I helped put him there, that I testified against him, that I chose strangers over my own blood. But those strangers are strangers no more. They're Alicia, who texts me pictures of her nursing school achievements. They're Jessica, who calls me when she's having a bad day. They're Tamara, who invited me to her wedding last year. They're Keisha and Destiny and Crystal and dozens of others whose lives are better because I chose truth. And when I lie in bed at night, touching Grandma Rose's ring, I hear her voice across the years. You did good, baby girl. You chose right. I'm proud of you. That's enough. That has to be enough. Because in the end, we're not defined by who we love or who loves us. We're not defined by our blood or our history or the family we're born into. We're defined by what we choose when the choice costs us everything. I chose truth, and I'd choose it again. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending us super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story.